A child is born on a savage steppe, no shoes to wear, no clan to lean on, betrayed and cast aside, surviving on fish blood and wild roots. Yet that very boy would become the leader of an army that made the whole world tremble. This is the story of Genghis Khan, and the birth of the Mongol Empire, from a parched grassland to campaigns that conquered almost the entire Eurasian continent, linking the civilizations of China, Persia, the Middle East, and Europe in a way never seen before. Temujin, later known as Genghis Khan, he began at the very bottom of society, with nothing in his hands, yet went on to change world history. Temujin's story begins with his mother, Hoelin of the Ongjurat, in the late 12th century. After marrying Chilidu, a warrior of the Merkit, she traveled back toward his camp. Along the way, they crossed territory controlled by Yasuge, a declining Mongol leader. The moment he saw Hoelin, he was struck. Despite already having a wife, he resolved to take her by force. Yasuge sent his two younger brothers galloping in pursuit, forcing Hoelin to beg her husband to flee. From that moment, she was seized and became the wife of this leader. Not long after, she bore him a son named Temujin. Legend says the child was born clutching a lump of blood, an omen of a warrior's destiny. From an early age, the boy showed unusual talent, skilled with the bow, strong in the saddle, adept at fishing. Yet his place within the family was tense. Begtar, Yasuge's eldest son, often mocked him as an outsider. At 9 years old, Temujin was taken by his father to seek a bride, partly to ease conflict at home. But on the return journey, Yasuge was poisoned and died. With the sudden death of the clan leader, the family fell apart. Hoelin and her children were abandoned on the freezing steppe, seemingly doomed to die through winter. But through their mother's iron will, the children survived on wild plants, small fish, and the strength of staying together. Still, conflict simmered. Begtar kept the best portions for himself and even sought to marry his stepmother to seize authority. In the end, Temujin and his brother Khazar killed their half-brother, igniting the first tragedy on Temujin's path to becoming Genghis Khan. When summer came, the Tatars returned and were stunned to find Hoelin and the children still alive. It unsettled them. Those abandoned children had grown and might dream of revenge. Hearing that Temujin had killed his half-brother, they used it as a pretext to hunt him down. The boy fled into the mountains of Burkhan Khaldun, hiding among dark forests and jagged stone. But he was captured and enslaved. Humiliated, yet unbroken, he nurtured a single goal: to return to the fiancée he had been promised. During a summer feast, he struck down a guard and threw himself into the Onan River to escape. The icy current carried him away, until a family named Soldus sheltered him. At 16, he returned, mounted his horse, and rode to claim Borte, the girl he had been promised. They married and lived by the Onan River, believing they might spend a quiet life on the windswept plain. But fate did not allow it. While Temujin was away hunting, the Merkit attacked their camp, looted their property, and abducted Borte. Too weak to win her back alone, Temujin's only chance was to seek help from Jamuka, his old friend, now a powerful warrior among the Karaite. With that aid, Temujin rescued his wife, but Borte was pregnant, and no one knew whose child it was. Even so, Temujin named the boy Hochi, the guest, and accepted him as his eldest son. After so many trials, Temujin understood a hard law of the steppe: survival could not depend on individual strength alone. So his family joined Jamuka's camp and fought beside him like kin. But over time, brotherhood faded. One day Jamuka told Temujin to stay behind and herd the livestock, a clear sign of contempt. Following Borte's advice, Temujin left in silence. Unexpectedly, half the camp chose to follow him, because of the fairness he enforced. On the steppe, people lived by an old rule. Nobles took the spoils as they pleased, while commoners stood outside, never rewarded. But Temujin was different. Raised by the Icy he learned to share from childhood and built a new, radical system. Distribute rewards by merit. He also introduced a humane policy for the rear lines. The spoils of a fallen warrior would go to his widow and orphan children. And he set aside a portion for the elderly, the wounded, and the disabled. Because of that, when Temujin left Jamuka's camp, he did not lack volunteers willing to follow him. But taking away half of the other side's warriors also meant turning an old friend into an enemy. At that time, the Mongols were still fragmented. No one had enough prestige to unite them all. Now, two warriors stood opposed, driven by the same ambition, to become Khagan, the supreme leader. In the summer of 1189, Temujin chose to strike first and convened a Kurultai, an event that was half political assembly, half festival, where people celebrated and competed in games. There, Temujin openly declared his aspiration to become Khagan of all the Mongols. When Jamuka heard the news, he was furious. The tension between the two camps escalated until one of Jamuka's relatives was killed in a raid. That was the pretext he had been waiting for, to launch war and crush Temujin. Both sides gathered their forces. In the end, the two armies met at Dalen Baljud, where the battlefield thundered with hooves and arrows flew like a storm. Despite fighting fiercely, Temujin was defeated and forced to withdraw into the Jekur Gorge. Jamuka's retaliation was brutal. He had 70 leaders boiled alive, beheaded chieftains, and dragged their bodies behind horses. Temujin fled with nothing, escaped his homeland, and vanished for 10 years. Many scholars believe he went south into China to wait for the right moment to return. Since ancient times, the people of the Yellow River Plain had repeatedly faced cavalry waves pouring down from the northern steppe. To halt invasions, defensive walls stretching for thousands of miles were built, later known as the Great Wall. But Chinese history constantly swung between unity and division. By the early 11th century, the Song dynasty of the Han people restored centralized power over much of the old territory. Yet in the 1120s, the Jurchen from Manchuria surged south like a flood and founded the Jin dynasty in the north. Though once dismissed as barbarians, they quickly absorbed Chinese language and court ritual, behaving like locals. Even so, the Song still saw them as outsiders and vowed to reclaim their lands. For 2 centuries, China was split. Jin controlled the north. Song held the south. The two sides fought without end, yet neither could secure total victory, having once risen from forests to seize the cities of the Central Plain. The Jin court understood the danger of a new steppe power, so they pursued a policy of using nomads to control nomads, hiring northern tribes as border troops. Whenever one group grew too strong, the Jin would back another to keep it in check. The strategy was ruthless but effective. The northern peoples were kept divided, trapped in constant warfare, unable to form a unified force. Then, in the winter of 1196, fearing the expansion of the Tatars, the Jin mobilized Temujin and their powerful ally, the Kharit, to strike straight into Tatar territory. After the victory, they were stunned by the spoils, in tents and treasure wagons. Goods overflowed. Even Tatar children wore gold nose rings and sable coats trimmed with gold thread. The Jin were delighted and appointed Temujin Jiaotaushi, commissioner for pacification. The campaign brought him enormous wealth and many new supporters. His relationship with the Kharit leader, Togrul Khan, Wang Khan, also grew closer. From that point on, Temujin's name began to travel far. 0 hours 19 minutes and 20 seconds. But while he was campaigning far away, the Jurchen quietly raided his main camp. When Temujin returned, he struck back immediately, and broke with the old customs of simply seizing livestock. He executed the ringleaders, crushed the rebellion, yet offered mercy to the commoners: submit and live, become members of the community, not slaves. To prove it, Temujin had his mother adopt an orphaned boy. The Jurchen were shaken, but many families agreed to join him. Such a policy had never appeared in steppe history, and it terrified the old Mongol aristocracy, who felt their status slipping away. Many drifted back to Jamuka, the man who had once defeated Temujin. In 1201, the two former blood brothers stepped into a fateful war, and tens of thousands of horsemen set the steppe ablaze. No fortresses, no banners, only hooves, bows, curved sabers, and spears. In the end, Jamuka was condemned to death. The struggle for the title of Khagan closed, power changed hands. From now on, there would be only one Khagan of all the Mongols. The remaining tribes, great and small, submitted. The aristocrats of resisting clans were executed. Their authority was erased at the root. Ordinary people were absorbed into the army, becoming the new lifeblood of the empire. Yet even Togrul Khan, the mentor of Temujin's youth, later turned on him, plotting to assassinate his former protégé. The scheme collapsed, and in 1206, a great Kurultai was convened under the vast blue sky. With countless horses gathered together, Temujin took the title Genghis Khan, and from grassland and north wind, a colossal empire was born. After Genghis Khan's enthronement in 1206, the scattered nomadic tribes of the steppe were unified under the Mongol standard. From that moment, the wheel of history began to turn violently, sweeping up dynasties from east to west. How could mounted armies drawn from a population of only a few million subdue more than 100 million subjects? How did a nomadic people build an effective system of rule across an entire continent? In 1209, the Mongols launched their first major campaign against the Western Shah. Historical records preserve little detail, but it seems Genghis Khan held the advantage in open battle. Still, the nomadic army met a serious obstacle: impregnable fortresses. That experience taught them the life-or-death importance of siege technology in war. In the northeast, the Jin dynasty still looked down on the Mongols, dismissing them as steppe barbarians. When Western Shah pleaded for help, Jin ignored it. Some officials even threatened to force the nomads into submission. But in February 1211, the Jin court would pay a heavy price for its arrogance. Genghis Khan summoned the tribes and prepared an invasion of the central plain. The Jin, despite an overwhelming population and forces, around 800,000 infantry and 150,000 elite heavy cavalry, had stretched their defenses thin, scattered across isolated strongholds. By contrast, the Mongols fielded about 90,000 elite warriors, trained with strict discipline and bound by absolute loyalty to their supreme commander. After breaking through the outer line, the Mongols split into two main thrusts. The Great Khan led 60,000 toward Juyong Pass, while Ogadei commanded a secondary wing toward Datong. The main force was blocked at the rugged Badger Pass mountain line, where Jin troops had prepared an ambush. The Mongols held position for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, two trusted generals, Jib and Subutai, took a small detachment over the mountains and struck the Wusha fortress. The stronghold was annihilated in a lightning raid. Immediately after, their second column rejoined the main army in the valley below, and a full-scale counterattack erupted across the steep slopes, ripping open the Jin defensive line layer by layer. Genghis Khan then ordered units to cross the ridges and strike from the rear. Jib employed a classic feigned retreat, abandoning spoils to lure Jin forces into pursuit. The Jin poured out of their fortifications, unaware they were riding into a trap. At once, thousands of Mongol horse archers hit from four directions, smashing the formation and opening the road into North China. After sweeping the countryside, the Mongols withdrew to winter quarters, preparing for the next phase. The following year, they surged south again and tightened a siege around Datong. There, Genghis Khan was struck by an arrow and badly wounded, forcing a retreat as winter winds returned. Even so, the withdrawal carried priceless lessons about siegecraft and about the enemy's habits. By 1213, the campaign resumed, powered by the overwhelming mobility of Mongol cavalry doctrine. Jin defenses fractured under storm like blows from the steppe. The countryside collapsed, villages panicked, and government forces were cut off before they could respond. Each battle carved deeper into enemy territory, throwing the rear into constant chaos. Many cities surrendered. Their people were either slaughtered or dragged away for forced labor. Only certain specialists, physicians, clergy, merchants, officials, and scholars were spared. They were encouraged, even compelled, to serve the Mongol war machine. Many captives were driven forward as human shields in later sieges. Once the entire region north of the Yellow River fell, the Mongols tightened a ring around Beijing, Zhengdu. Instead of smashing the walls head-on, they cut supply routes and starved the capital toward collapse. Months later, disease spread through the siege camps, forcing the Mongols to pause. A treaty was signed. The Jin emperor offered tribute, treasures, war horses, laborers, and a princess, to save his throne. The victorious army withdrew, hauling tens of thousands of carts of loot back into the steppe. But as soon as they crossed the Great Wall, a rider arrived with urgent news. The Jin court had moved its capital to Kaifeng. The message enraged Genghis Khan. It proved the enemy still refused to truly submit. The Mongols turned around at once and marched back on Beijing. This time, with the help of Han Chinese engineers and craftsmen, they breached the defenses. Fire spread through the city, turning everything into ruin. For weeks, wagon trains of plunder stretched into the distance, silently rolling away from the shattered capital. From a people once scorned as nomads, the Mongols had toppled a great dynasty with nothing but steel and horses. Right after that, the fury of the steppe swung westward. In 1205, the Nomad were crushed without mercy under Genghis Khan's hand. Their leader fled and drifted into the territory of the Kara Khitai, Western Liao, a Central Asian state founded by the Khitan. There, the ruler took him in and even married him into the royal family. But only 2 years later, the fugitive turned on his host and seized power. In 1216, he crossed the border and attacked Al-Malik, a city under Mongol protection. In response, the general Jeeb was dispatched and won a decisive victory at Balasagun. Within 2 years, the entire Kara Khitai realm collapsed and submitted to the Great Khan. Now Mongol forces stood on the frontier of the Khwarezmian Empire, a Persian-influenced power ruling Central Asia. Hoping for peaceful relations, Genghis Khan sent gifts and proposed friendship. But the local governor suspected deceit. He arrested the Mongol trade mission and executed the envoys. The insult ignited Genghis Khan's wrath. He gathered intelligence along the Silk Road, mobilized siege engineers from the east, and prepared for revenge. A carefully designed three-pronged invasion was set in motion. Jeeb crossed the Tian Shan with about 20,000 men. A feint that convinced the enemy this was the main thrust and drew defenders away from key cities. Meanwhile, Chagatai and Ogaday struck the city where the envoys had been killed. After 5 months of assault, a traitor opened the gate, and Mongol troops poured in. The city fell. Its people were massacred. The official who ordered the arrests was punished with molten silver poured down his throat. Next, Genghis Khan crossed the Kyzylkum Desert and attacked Bukhara from an unexpected direction. By March 1220, Samarkand, the Khwarezmian capital, fell after only 5 days under siege. The Shah fled, but was hunted down and killed. After taking the capital, the Mongols split again. Hochi advanced from the north while Genghis pressed from the south, sealing every escape route. After days of resistance, a city surrendered. Hochi preferred negotiation over annihilation. That restraint enraged the court faction. Command was handed to Ogaday. The city was leveled. No one survived. Blood ran red through the river. The episode chilled Hochi's standing and planted a father-son rift that would smolder for years. Then Tului, the Great Khan's youngest son, led 50,000 troops deep into Khorasan. One by one, great cities fell, Merv, then Nishapur, crushed beneath iron hooves. With nowhere able to hold, only cities that submitted immediately, like Herat, escaped mass slaughter. To control densely populated lands, the Mongols deliberately spread terror, destroying brutally so that the next city would surrender at the first sight of smoke. At the foot of the Hindu Kush, the Khwarezmian prince Jalal al-Din rallied 60,000 Turkic and Afghan fighters. Genghis Khan sent Shigi Kutuku with 30,000 to confront him. The battle unfolded in the narrow Parwan Valley, where cavalry could not fully dominate. Jalal al-Din ordered his troops to dismount and unleash sustained arrow fire, throwing the Mongol formation into disorder. For the first time, Mongol troops faltered under a dense storm of arrows. Jalal al-Din counterattacked at once, sweeping the field. Half the Mongol force was destroyed, the rest fled. The defeat cracked the aura of invincibility and sparked uprisings. Genghis Khan and Tului had to remain for a month to crush rebellions. Yet Jalal al-Din could not hold his advantage, his coalition fractured. With only 20,000 left, he retreated south, seeking a route into India. The Great Khan launched a lightning pursuit, riding without rest for 2 days and nights. As Jalal al-Din neared the river crossing, Mongol troops struck suddenly and violently. Still, his trail vanished. Even so, nearly all Khwarezmian territory had fallen under Mongol control. Unable to catch Jalal al-Din, the two generals Subutai and Jebe took 20,000 men and camped through the winter of 1220. From there, they raided villages and blocked any relief armies coming from the west. In that setting, a bold plan of strategic reconnaissance began to take shape. In 1221, Mongol forces entered Georgia, sweeping the land to strip supplies. When King George IV mustered an army, including warriors who had once fought in the Crusades, Subutai staged a feigned retreat at the Battle of Kunan, drawing the cavalry away from the infantry before encircling and eunuchdosing them. After the victory, the Mongols turned back into Iran, torching a string of wealthy cities. Months later, they surged again across Georgia, crossed the Caucasus, and pushed north. There, they met a coalition of Lezgins, Alans, Kipchaks, and others, more than 50,000 fighters. The first Mongol assault was repelled, forcing them to pull back and hold. The enemy chose to dig in, hoping the Mongols would run out of food. In the tense standoff, Subutai quietly bribed the Kipchaks, convincing them to abandon the camp at night. The Mongols seized the moment, launched an all-out strike, and wiped out the remaining coalition. They did not stop there. They hunted down the fleeing Kipchaks, then burned Astrakhan, turning it into ash. After returning to the steppe, the two generals split. Jebe rode onward, while Subutai pushed toward the Crimea. The Mongols opened contacts with Venetian merchants to gain control of trade routes. Meanwhile, the Kipchaks fled with warnings to the lands of the Rus, a region that included parts of today's Russia and Ukraine. Fractured into dozens of rival principalities, facing a looming threat, the princes formed an allied army of 60,000 horsemen. The Mongols quickly reunited their forces and sent envoys, proposing the Rus stay out of the conflict. But the envoys were killed, making war inevitable. The allied army advanced to the Dnieper River, planning to surround the Mongols. Subutai chose to sacrifice 1,000 men to delay pursuit and protect the core force. Inside the Rus coalition, commanders quarreled. One side wanted immediate attack, the other favored defense. Under pressure from the Kipchaks, the Hawks took control, yet the allied columns marched in a scattered, uncoordinated way. On the 9th day, the Kipchak vanguard fell into an ambush on the Kalka River. Subutai again feigned withdrawal, pulling the enemy into a trap in a crescent-shaped killing ground. Once positions were set, he slammed in heavy cavalry, while mounted archers poured arrows until the Rus ranks buckled. The battlefield turned into a slaughter. Only one disciplined group managed to hold formation. Having prepared carefully, they gathered roughly 10,000 men, built a ring of wagons on a hill, and defended from inside the circle. But the Mongols tightened the noose. Only a tenth of the Rus force survived the massacre. Afterward, Subutai crossed the Caspian Sea region, swept away remaining Kipchak remnants, and shattered the Volga Bulgars, though they did not occupy territory. This expedition brought back priceless intelligence about Europe, preparing the Mongols for future invasions. Upon returning, Subutai received orders to punish Western Shah, a kingdom that had refused to support earlier campaigns. Genghis Khan personally led the attack. This time, siege skills and terrain knowledge gave the Mongols absolute advantage. Yet even as victory came easily, the Great Khan suffered a severe fall from his horse, was badly injured, and developed a prolonged fever. He died on the 18th of August 1227. Before his death, he divided his domains among his 4 sons. Ogadei, the third son, became Great Khan and ran the central government. Hochi, the eldest, held the western lands, including the steppe realms that would form the base of the Western Khanates, while Chagatai ruled Central Asia, and Tului safeguarded the Mongol heartland. This division maintained stability at first, but it also planted the seeds of future fracture. After taking the throne, Ogedei gradually reformed administration, moving toward clearer taxation and institutions. The Mongol Empire entered an age of expansion on three major fronts: south into China, west into Iran and West Asia, and northwest deeper into Eastern Europe and the medieval Russian lands. In 1235, a Kurultai was convened and approved the invasion of Europe. A main force of about 130,000 cavalry under Batu, Hochi's eldest son, advanced. Within 2 years, Volga Bulgaria fell, followed by the regions of the Alans, Kipchaks, and beyond. By late summer 1237, the territories east of the Don River had changed hands. In November, Mongol envoys reached the court of Grand Prince Yuri II of Vladimir with demands for submission. Yuri refused. 3 months later, Vladimir was reduced to dust. In 1238 and 1239, the Rus principalities were crushed one by one. Many cities vanished from the map. The Mongols divided into multiple wings, striking in clusters to prevent the enemy from concentrating forces. A decisive battle erupted at the Sid River, ending in total Mongol victory. Only cities like Novgorod and Pskov remained unharmed, because they had submitted earlier. In December 1240, Kiev, the largest political and religious center of the Rus, fell after a long siege. Batu did not stop. He drove his cavalry toward the heart of Central Europe. In Genghis Khan's time, the Mongols had already dealt with Venice, trading intelligence for commercial privilege. Now that network paid off, as Italian merchants supplied vital information about Europe. By late 1240, plans to strike Poland and Hungary were complete. Batu sent envoys to leaders such as Henry II and Bela IV, but they too were rejected. The Mongols split into 3 columns, one feinting into Poland, the main force crossing the Carpathians, and another moving along the Danube routes. Early 1241, Poland burned, fortresses collapsed one by one. Mongol cavalry broke into small detachments, punching into regions before defenses could form. Resistance was crushed by the signature pattern of the Steppe Empire: feigned retreats and ambush traps. The major battle was brutal. Europe suffered a catastrophic defeat. At the same time, another Mongol wing hit Hungary from the east. It met resistance at first, but coordinated attacks from multiple directions shattered the defensive line. After 3 failed charges, the Hungarian army retreated through its only corridor, where Mongol troops were already waiting. The retreat became a massacre. In just 2 days, 2 Central European kingdoms were devastated. Mongol cavalry continued to raid deeper, threatening Serbia and forcing Bulgaria to submit. Continental Europe entered a nightmare. The Pope called for a crusade. The Holy Roman Emperor rushed to mobilize. The Mongols planned to roll across the entire continent, straight to the Atlantic. But the campaign broke off when Ogedei died in late 1241. Batu was forced to turn back to Mongolia for the succession council. Europe escaped, by a hair's breadth. After the defeat at the Indus River in 1221, Prince Jalal al-Din withdrew into the frontier mountains, failing to secure an alliance in Delhi. He was attacked and fled into Iraq. In 1224, he proclaimed himself ruler at Tbilisi, expanded into the Caucasus, took Azerbaijan, and struck Rus forces. But those brief victories triggered uprisings all around him. In 1231, he fled toward Anatolia and was killed. After that, the Mongols fully subdued regions across the Caucasus, including Georgia and beyond. In 1251, Mongke became Great Khan. He assigned the southern China front to Kublai, and the western campaign to Hulagu. By 1256, Hulagu marched into West Asia, eliminated the remaining Khwarezmian factions, and destroyed the assassins. After securing Iran, he delivered an ultimatum to the Abbasid Caliph al-Mustazim, who refused. The Mongols then attacked Baghdad, one of the richest cities on earth. On the 10th of February 1258, the city fell. Libraries and knowledge were burned. The caliph was executed, and the center of Islamic power shifted toward Egypt. After that, places like Aleppo and Damascus submitted. Yet suddenly, Great Khan Mongke died. Hulagu withdrew most of his forces back toward Mongolia, leaving Kipbuka to hold the Levant with 25,000 soldiers. He tried to ally with the Crusader states, but was rejected. Meanwhile, the Mamluks of Egypt marched into Palestine with overwhelming strength. At Ain Jalut, the Mongol army was lured into an ambush by Baibars and Kudas. Kitbuka fell in battle, the Mongol force collapsed. For the first time, the Steppe Empire was defeated in a major field battle. The victory made the Mamluks the dominant power of the Islamic world and halted Mongol expansion westward. Civil war then erupted, preventing the empire from regaining momentum. In China, Kublai pressed to seize the entire realm. His brother Arikbog declared himself Great Khan at Karakoram, triggering a Mongol civil war. In the west, another ruler, Berke, opposed the destruction of Baghdad and attacked Hulagu's territories in Iran. The empire splintered into factions. Kublai focused on the north. The Song dynasty briefly regained ground. Arikbog tried to hold Central Asia but steadily lost. After repeated defeats and abandoned allies, he surrendered. Kublai became the recognized Great Khan. At the same time, the Western Mongol conflict ended as key leaders died. From that point on, the empire once unified under Genghis Khan effectively fragmented into 4 separate states. After the civil war, Kublai consolidated his rule and built the Yuan dynasty. He moved the capital to Dadu, Beijing, and proclaimed himself emperor in 1271. The central government was reorganized tightly, the army was restructured, with Han troops forming a major component. To finish unifying China, he realized the method had to change. The Song were weak on open plains but protected by strong fortifications. To defeat them, the Mongols needed to shift from direct cavalry clashes to long sieges and systematic assaults. The Song's strongest fortress line stood at Xianyang, with double defensive walls and deep food reserves. Kublai ordered the construction of 5,000 warships and recruited sailors from North China and Korea to control river systems and cut enemy supply routes. A fleet of about 70,000 elite marines marked a turning point in Yuan warfare. The siege of Xianyang lasted 6 years. Because it was the gateway to pushing deeper into the south, the Song tried to break the siege and failed. Finally, a new type of powerful trebuchet smashed the defenses, and the city fell in 1273. After that, Yuan forces advanced into the south. The Song enthroned Zhao Bang, only 8 years old, in a desperate attempt to keep the dynasty alive. On the 19th of March 1279, the naval battle of Yamen erupted. Though outnumbered, Yuan forces annihilated the Song fleet. More than 100,000 soldiers and officials died, among them the last Song emperor. Zhao Bang. The Mongol conquest of China ended after 74 years and cost up to 25 million Han lives through war, disease, and famine. Over decades, the Mongols built an empire that seemed unstoppable from devastated lands. Yet within that blinding glory, cracks were already forming, power struggles and silent competitions waiting to explode. After becoming one of the mightiest empires of its age, Mongolia itself carried a wound that could not be erased. No strength can resist the brutality of history's wheel. Every system meets its inevitable collapse. What made the horsemen who once thundered from the Pacific shore to the edge of Europe finally slow and vanish like dust? In China's wider sphere, the Ilkhanate had been founded in the 1260s by Hulagu, the same conqueror who had sacked Baghdad. After his death, the state slid into turmoil. Rulers drowned in indulgence, handing real power to officials and generals who manipulated the court. Famine struck repeatedly. The economy weakened under rampant corruption and failed policies. And costly wars against neighboring states dragged China deeper into exhaustion. The instability only truly eased when Ghazan Khan took power in 1295. He converted to Islam to anchor the dynasty's legitimacy and religion, and launched sweeping economic and social reforms. With the treasury restored, the court financed major construction in the capital Tabriz, including a magnificent mausoleum for the Great Khan himself. Abroad, he signed a peace agreement with Takhta Khan of the Golden Horde, then opened campaigns against the Mamluks. In December 1299, Mongol forces won the Third Battle of Homs. but later had to withdraw before the winter rains. Then in 1304, still only in his 30s, Ghazan died without a male heir. His brother Olgi took the throne. Unlike Ghazan, the eighth ruler of the Ilkhanate achieved no decisive victories over the Mamluks. His greatest success was leaving behind an heir. When Olgi died, his son, only 12 years old, was placed on the throne with the backing of the powerful Emir Chupan. Chupan personally supervised the young emperor's education, teaching Persian and Arabic literacy, and drilling him in history, genealogy, and the traditions of Mongol aristocracy. The early reign of Abu Sa'id was turbulent. He faced pressure from the Chagatai Khanate and the Golden Horde, while also crushing internal unrest. A fragile peace held until Abu Sa'id's love for Chupan's daughter, Baghdad Khatun, pushed the court toward tragedy. To marry her, he eliminated nearly Chupan's entire family. After Chupan's death, Abu Sa'id ruled directly, only to die soon after, reportedly at the hands of the Khatun. Whether or not the tale is fully verified, the reality is stark. The Ilkhan died young and left no successor. His death is often treated as the end of the Ilkhanate. Many scholars point to decadence and the long-term effects of close-kin marriage within the ruling house. Hulagu's line nearly went extinct, and the state slid toward collapse. Yet a ruler dying without an heir was not unusual in Mongol tradition. The Kurultai system, where princes gathered to choose a new Khan, had once stabilized transfers of power, often through a regency that ran the state during transition. In the Ilkhanate, there was still a powerful figure capable of carrying that burden. Baghdad Khatun herself, sharp-minded, forceful, famously bearing a sword at her waist, and deeply influential in politics. She looked like an ideal regent. But by then, deeper problems had already taken root. From Ghazan onward, the great Khans gradually lost the loyalty of key military commanders. Many felt pushed to the margins of power, and believed the ancestral way of life was being abandoned. The Islamization of the court was the clearest sign of that rupture. Ghazan and Olgi abandoned the Mongols' secret burial rites, replacing them with costly public tombs. Kurultai were no longer convened to decide major policy, and even the end of war with the Mamluks came by diplomacy rather than conquest. The long regency under Chupan further hollowed out central authority and entrenched military power outside the throne. Only after Chupan's death in 1327 did Abu Sa'id truly rule, but that independence lasted only a few years. Worse, tax reforms from the center inflamed the warrior class. In 1335, a new Khan, Arpa Kian, was chosen. With a soldier's background, he personally went to the front that winter and pushed the Golden Horde northward, raising hopes he could reunite Mongol loyalty. Yet Arpa Kian's foundations were fragile. The widow of Abu Sa'id, pregnant at the time, fled to the governor of Diyarbakir, Ali Pasha, aiming to reclaim power. The child was born a girl, but that did not prevent war. In early 1336, Ali Pasha raised Musa Khan, a descendant of Hulagu, as a figurehead and launched a rebellion. Arpa Kian was swiftly executed, ending the last real attempt at stable Ilkhanate rule. It proved a brutal lesson. Whoever held a descendant of Genghis Khan could claim the throne. Between 1335 and 1343, as many as 8 puppet Khans were elevated by competing factions. Former allies turned on each other, each backing a different candidate. The chaos dragged on into the 1350s, until the last puppet ruler was deposed around 1353. Meanwhile in Central Asia, after Chagatai died in 1242, his ulus was initially constrained by the wider Mongol center. Later, leaders exploited the civil war between Kublai and Arik Bok to claim independence, expand territory, and co-opt local officials. A later ruler, Barak, expelled Kublai's administrators from Transoxiana, only to be pulled into conflict with Kaidu, of the Ogadyad line, supported by the Golden Horde. In 1282, Kaidu installed a puppet Khan, Dua, to control the region. Kaidu even raided Yuan territory repeatedly. Yet he never claimed the title of Great Khan. He styled himself Khan of the Ogadyad branch. In 1301, Kaidu died from wounds sustained in battle. Dua then negotiated a broad peace among Mongol successor states, seeking to prevent a united front against him. Dua died in 1307, and the Chagatai realm entered deep instability. One faction wanted to preserve nomadic traditions. The other was increasingly shaped by Islam and the prosperous urban culture of Transoxiana. When Tarmashiran, Dua's son, took power, Islamization accelerated, and the backlash ignited. By the summer of 1334, the Khan was assassinated, and the throne plunged into disorder. The Chagatai Khanate's legitimacy eroded. Regional warlords acted independently, acknowledging the Khan only in name. In 1347, in Transoxiana, a military commander without royal blood, Kazaghan, overthrew the reigning Khan and installed a replacement he could control. That same year, eastern nobles raised Tughlaq Timur, a descendant of Dua, as Khan. From then on, the Chagatai realm split in two. The west clung to the old court in name, while the steppe east of the Sir Darya became Mogolistan. In the late 1350s, an assassination created the pretext for Tughlaq Timur to campaign west and force Transoxiana into submission. After victory, he withdrew to Mogolistan, leaving the west under his son, Ilyas Khoja. Many local chiefs submitted, others fled, including a leader from the Barlas clan. In that opening, through diplomacy and personal daring, Timur was promoted to tribal chief and began his ascent into politics. Tughlaq Timur died suddenly in 1363, only in his early 30s. His line ruled Mogolistan into the 17th century. After his death, Ilyas Khoja was driven out of the west by Timur and Kazaghan's grandson. That alliance soon fractured. In the end, Timur prevailed, seized power, and launched campaigns that forged the Timurid Empire. In Mogolistan, the Chagatai descendants weakened, splintering into loose territories. In the east, where Mongol descendants still held China, the situation also drifted toward crisis. Kublai died in 1294. And the throne passed to his grandson Timur, Emperor Chungzong, because Kublai's intended heir had already died. Before long, excessive rewards to princes drained the treasury. Corruption worsened, and in the 14th century, the onset of the Little Ice Age brought lower temperatures and prolonged wet conditions. The consequences appeared early, in 1295. Severe storms devastated the Yangtze Delta. The Yellow River produced catastrophic floods. Drought in prior years fed massive locust swarms that ruined harvests for nearly a decade. In Mongolia itself, harsh winters killed herds, forcing thousands to migrate south seeking relief. Kublai had maintained strong disaster relief policies, grain, livestock, and supplies paid from the state treasury. Later rulers did not dare abolish them, because relief had become part of Yuan legitimacy. But as climate stress intensified, the burden exceeded what the state could carry. Records describe near-annual disasters from 1272 to 1357. Almost every other year, some vast region suffered famine. A peak came in 1301. Spring drought followed by major storms hitting the lower riverlands. Survivors begged the government in desperation. People began to believe heaven's mandate was leaving the Yuan, especially after Timur died without a son. A succession struggle erupted among his grandsons. In the end, Kublai Khan, raised on the steppe, seized the throne. He ruled in a nomadic style, relying on aristocrats, handing out rewards, building palaces, and granting special privileges to secure loyalty. In just 4 months, the year's treasury was spent. The court was forced to collect old debts and raise taxes, even on levies Timur had cancelled. In 1311, his brother Ayurbarwada Bayantu Khan succeeded him, swiftly purged Kublai's faction, reversed key policies, and scrapped the new currency experiments. He aimed to restore a Confucian-style administration, reviving the civil service exams and promoting talent by classical Chinese standards. In this era, every change of Khan meant upheaval, old laws erased, new ones imposed, while the Yuan court became a battlefield of rival power blocks. Stability returned only in 1333, when Togun Timur, Emperor Haizong, a prince previously exiled, took the throne. He became the longest reigning Yuan emperor after Kublai, ruling from 1333 until his death in 1370. At first, like many predecessors, Togun Timur was a figurehead. After the powerful minister El Timur died, a rival faction led by Bayan, a noble of the Merkit lineage with a restorationist agenda, rose to dominance. Bayan tried to revive the older order associated with Kublai, reinforcing ethnic hierarchy that had blurred over time. He also sought administrative restructuring, cutting court spending, lowering the salt tax, boosting agriculture, and accelerating disaster relief, but concentrating power in a narrow clique and suppressing opposition brutally fueled resentment. In 1340, Bayan's own nephew, Toktoa, allied with the emperor to remove him. Bayan died only a month later. The reformist, Relief First, bloc declined, giving way to a scholar-led, Sinicizing agenda. Toktoa, only 26, rapidly purged the court, restored the civil examinations, elevated Confucian officials, and tried to rebuild the emperor's prestige. But even as politics shifted, disasters intensified. Refugees poured in from the northwest. The court eventually issued an order forbidding anyone to leave Mongolia, punishable by death. Throughout the 1320s, floods repeatedly destroyed crops, prices spiraled, and unrest spread across North China. In 1341, more than 300 riots erupted, most famously the Red Turban Movement. In 1344, Toktoa resigned, then returned in 1349 as the emperor withdrew from governing. This marked Toktoa's second regency, very different in tone. He ordered massive money printing to fund a huge project, diverting the Yellow River south toward the Shandong Peninsula, restoring the Grand Canal route, and saving the salt tax system, the yuan's financial backbone. But the project concentrated enormous forced labor under harsh conditions. Wages paid in devalued currency became fuel for revolt. A major uprising broke out right at the construction zone in the Y River basin. The court was caught off guard. Cities fell in rapid succession. In emergency, Toktoa mobilized militias, rebuilt training systems, and shifted strategy to restrain autonomous local warlords. By late 1352, the Yuan had retaken the entire Y basin. Yet at the end of 1354, just as Toktoa prepared to destroy Zhang, the last major rebel regime still standing, he was abruptly dismissed. Desertions surged. The Red Turbans revived stronger than ever. Toktoa was assassinated in 1356. As rebel leaders fought each other for power, the emperor did almost nothing. After the Battle of Lake Poyang, Zhu Yanzhong rose to dominance and founded his own dynasty. On June 20, 1368, Dadu, Beijing, returned to Han control after more than 4 centuries of non-Han rule. Aside from a few Yuan loyalists who held out for about 2 more decades, Mongol rule in China effectively ended in 1368. Fleeing back to their ancestral lands, Togun Timur's descendants still claimed they were the legitimate Yuan, yet modern historians call this the Northern Yuan. By then, the Great Khans were often only nominal figures under the control of steppe power brokers. Still, they kept the ambition of retaking China. In 1449, the Khan Asen Taishi defeated Ming forces, captured the Zhengtong Emperor in the Tumu crisis, and nearly took Beijing. The Ming survived, and intensified the reinforcement of the Great Wall, shaping the massive fortification we recognize today. In the 16th century, Dayan Khan, a direct descendant of Genghis Khan, reunited much of the steppe under the banner of the imperial line. That order lasted until the mid-17th century, when the Manchus rose. In the far west, the Golden Horde, descended from Hochi, also entered a spiral of instability. Earlier, the region had prospered. Major cities grew along Eurasian caravan routes, serving merchants traveling between China and Egypt through Mongol lands. The Khans promoted trade by lowering export taxes and resettling Rus communities and Kipchak tribes around key trading points on the rivers. The Golden Horde's peak came under Uzbeg Khan, who ruled for nearly 3 decades in the early 14th century. But near the end of his reign, decline began as climate turned harsher. Rainfall gradually decreased after 1280, then dropped sharply after 1320. With less water, steppe grasslands withered, desertification spread, and nomadic communities fell into hardship, pushing many toward cities and straining already limited resources. Then shocks stacked on shocks. The collapse of the Ilkhanate in the Chagatai realm in the 1330s cut key trade routes, crippling urban economies. After the death of Yani Beg, the Black Death struck as the killing blow. Crowded, unsanitary cities became disease reservoirs, most famously Crimea, where some accounts describe tens of thousands dying in a single outbreak. In 1343, Yani Beg was said to have hurled plague-infected corpses into the besieged city of Kaffa, helping the plague spread into Europe. When he died in 1357, Batu's line effectively entered terminal decline. His sons fought for the throne in chaos. By the early 1360s, the ruling line was effectively broken. Anyone with Jochid blood could claim the title. And within 20 years some 25 pretenders declared themselves masters of the Golden Realm. In that turmoil, the warlord Mamai, rising from Crimea, held real power for more than a decade. As the center weakened, borderlands slipped away. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania seized Kiev and expanded toward the Black Sea. In the east, territories declared independence. At the same time, Moscow rose, still formally a vassal, yet steadily strengthening. Then Toktamish, a descendant of the Jochid line, overthrew Mamai and tried to restore Golden Horde authority. He forged alliances with the Mamluks, the Ottomans, and other successor Khanates, forced Lithuania into vassalage, and proclaimed himself the rightful heir of Genghis Khan. That ambition drove him into conflict with Timur, founder of the Timurid Empire in Persia and Central Asia. In the wars of 1391 and 1395, Toktamish was defeated both times. Timur's retaliation was ruthless. He destroyed major cities, paralyzing the trade network. The Golden Horde never recovered its urban economy. After Timur withdrew, power fell to Edigu, a general without Genghisid blood who nevertheless dominated the court, installing puppet khans and trying to rebuild order. He even reclaimed Kiev and pressed Moscow in campaigns, and revived coin minting in key cities. To bolster legitimacy, Edigu promoted Islamization among steppe tribes. In 1419, Edigu was assassinated by a Khan he himself had elevated. After that, the Golden Horde lacked any figure strong enough to hold unity. By the 1430s, a partial reordering emerged as 3 major powers rose. Abul Khair Khan in the eastern steppe founded the Uzbek Khanate, controlling lands east of the Volga, an ancestor of later steppe states. Sayyid Ahmad II, linked to the Toktamish line, asserted power west of the Don and laid foundations for new Khanates, and Moscow steadily broke free under Ivan III. In 1480, a Khan attempted invasion, failed, and was killed the next year. Successors followed, but central power kept collapsing. And in 1783, the Crimean Khanate was annexed, ending the last surviving trace of the Golden Horde, and with it the final shadow of the Mongol imperial world. No curses, no supernatural force, just greed, division, and internal conflict, destroying an empire once considered the greatest in human history. And by the iron law of time, even the thunder of hooves and the golden glory of conquest dissolved into dust.